What's up, Rube? It's Little Big Robot's back with some coffee. Get some coffee. Get yourself some coffee. Have a little talk. Little Big Robot's toy podcast number something or other. I can't remember off the top of my head. Just some quick notes before we get started. Hey, this is not going to be a political conversation. How you voted is your business, and it's none of mine. You will know probably in very short time whether your vote was correct or not. We'll see. That's all I know about that. And also, you really, if you did not vote, if you decided to sit this one out, it's a real shame because it literally is the most American thing I think you can do. It sounds cheesy and silly and whatever, but it's the most direct way to let your thoughts on a matter be heard. It's not a perfect system. I think it worked during this last election just fine. I think it actually showed how solid our election foundation is. Even though it didn't go the way I wanted it to go, I still believe that it worked correctly. So that was good. There was a few issues, of course. There always is. But anyway, today I wanted to talk... other side note, sorry. I should be putting these podcasts back up on Spotify. I hate Spotify, but I don't get paid by them, so who cares? I should be putting it back up on Spotify and at least having an audio-only download in the description. If you're like me, you use YouTube as a kind of a podcast platform. If, like you say, let's say a Star Talk, which is a great science podcast, I'll let it play if I'm in my car listening and just use the YouTube video and minimize it. YouTube allows for that. That's great. But if you want to just like download the audio file, I'll have those MP3s, I think, in the description. Hopefully by the time this goes up, if not shortly. So I'm going to be kind of getting that together. Also, if you can please subscribe, that'd be great. Give a thumbs up, all that stuff. But really, if you can leave a comment, if you have a thought on something that I'm talking about, please leave a comment. This channel is for toys, yes, but it's really for kind of a certain type of person who enjoys being curious and trying to have a positive outlook on life, even when life is really hard for myself or for other people. Let's try to keep up positivity, just because it's going to be a rough go at it. It's been a rough for a lot of people, but it's going to be rough for coming up. So, we're going to need to everybody just be kind of cool to each other, blah, blah, blah. But this channel is for maintaining at least, some kind of positive feel in the world. And toys are a great way to do that. But anyway, so what we're going to talk about today, after let me take a little sip of this. It's pretty good. I got it free with a bag of coffee I had ground, and I was glad I did. I didn't need any more caffeine, but it was free. So what we're talking about today are tariffs. If you don't know the meaning of the word tariff, do look up the dictionary meaning of it. But in the news lately, you might have heard a lot about it if you're not from the U.S., or if, let's say, you're younger, don't understand a lot about politics, or just don't really keep up with it. The big reason it's been bandied about so much lately is because Trump won the presidency, and he said one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to slap tariffs or increase tariffs on certain countries. So when Trump won in 2016, he did tariffs on China, for example, and Biden, when he won again in 2020, he did not rescind or did not remove those tariffs. So a lot of people forgot that. As a matter of fact, 6 months ago, I'll have a video in the description just because I remembered it and then I remember posting about it. So I found just one of the many videos that you can find on like financial channels or CNBC or whatever, whatever it is, NBC News or something. Was Biden's announcement that he was putting 100% tariff on Chinese EVs, electric vehicles. So that was a tariff that a lot of people kind of forgot. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But essentially, we've lived with tariffs for 7 years or whatever. What Trump is doing is saying he's doing is he's going to add an additional 10%. He had just announced this today at the time of this podcast. I'll put the video in the link, but you could find it in any news channel. Just put Trump announced new. He's doing a lot of announcements right now because he's the incoming president, and he's going to announce his cabinet picks and stuff. Again, everything he says and does is subject to a lot of change. His cabinet picks have to get approved, even though he has a Senate and the House. There's still plenty of people on the right as well who might not vote. I mean, it's a very thin majority, so he might not get all those passed. And a lot of this stuff is just campaign promise stuff. If you believed a lot of it, that's fine. I don't believe any politician until they do something. That's just how it goes in politics. So we'll see. But he talked about increasing the current tariffs on China 10% and then putting a tariff of 25% on Mexico and on Canada. Another sip, please. Let's see. That's enough caffeine. I think I'm good. Pretty wound up. Anyway, so what does that mean? What basically means is if you buy $100 in toys, because this is a toy channel, from China, because Lord knows most of them come from China now. When it gets to the port of entry, when it gets on a boat, or I live in San Diego, one of the busiest connections to Mexico, in the country, it's right there. Like I could drive to Tijuana. A lot of people walk to Tijuana every day and come back. If your goods arrive in that port of entry or in that, what would that be called? Border? I don't know what they call it when trade comes through. If there's a 25% tariff, from what I understand, of course you pay it. You as the buyer, not the shipper, not Mexico or China, because China does do a lot of business through Mexico, which people talk about a lot, how they kind of get around tariffs is by going through Mexico. But Mexico's not our largest trading partner. Mexico is our largest trading partner. I think China's second, Canada third, something like that. But China is not our biggest trading partner. It's Mexico. But if you buy something from Mexico, some shoes, some clothes, electronics, whatever, or whenever they come there, and it's $100, you have to then go and physically pay the government, the U.S. government at the border, whatever, this tariff to get your goods. So you say, all right, well, here's my fee. Give me my goods. That's additional money that you are paying as the company that sells these items to the U.S. citizens like myself. So if you're a U.S. citizen and you're getting some Reeboks from China because they're all made in China now, you're going to pay more. If you buy a transformer that comes from China because they're all made in China now, you're going to pay more. How much that will be, who knows? The original tariffs from Trump, some companies, from what I understand, companies absorbed some of those costs. No company, I believe, said, we're going to eat all the additional costs, don't worry about it. And some companies, and some of that cost will be passed on to you. However much it is hard to say, but we know pretty much for a fact that costs will increase. When you're running on getting prices down, you're saying stuff like, let's make America affordable again. And then you put tariffs not only on China, one of our biggest trading partners, but also on our biggest trading partner, Mexico, who's also a friend. I'm not saying they're a perfect friend or neighbor. We're not a perfect friend or neighbor as well. You put the tariffs on your friend to the south and to the north. That is not going to decrease costs. I think people who supported these tariffs or this idea are now coming around to the fact that these increase of costs will happen. To them, a lot of people believe that downstream or whatever, those companies will be forced to come and resettle in America or build factories in America. Now, keep this in mind. This is something to be considered very seriously. Does anyone think that when you're paying a Chinese worker or a Mexican worker $5, I don't know, whatever they'd get an hour, $10, whatever it is, and then bring it to America and have to pay American people $7 to $20 an hour? Here in California, minimum wage is quite high, and California is the fifth largest country, quote unquote, by GDP or whatever you call it. It's like if it was a country, it'd be like the fifth largest country in the world as far as that. So what California does affects the whole country, like Texas in a way. So you're not going to want to pay an American more money to make your product more expensive and less desired. You're going to pay the cheap Chinese worker. Not in every situation. It depends. Like I saw a Walmart CEO saying that something like 2/3 of their products are made in America. That doesn't mean they're created in America, or that doesn't mean that they're sourced from America. That means that they're put together by Americans. So it's a part of the chain. A lot of people forget that. A lot of stuff is made in America, and they ship it to China. They assemble it in China, ship it back, and that's cheaper than paying American workers. Doesn't mean American workers are selfish or bad. That means that American workers, let me adjust my mic here a little bit. That means that American workers want a livable wage. That's just a fact. So your toys that come over here, for example, Kotobukiya Hexagear, are made in China. I believe the writing in their manuals is Mandarin, I think. Anyway, Acid Rain, and that company who makes, coffee, Acid Rain, and one of my favorites, Archcore, are made in China. Fantastic toys, cool company. I think there's really good people working there. There's good people in every country in the world. Some of them just happen to live or were born in a country where there's no way they could swap out the government, because the government is totalitarian or will kill you for even talking bad about them. So, that's another topic. But so those toys will become more expensive to me. Now, I'm very lucky. I think I can afford some of this stuff. So you're going to hear a lot of people who have money, basically, who to them $1 million home is really not a big deal. They have 3 of them, or even just one. People making $450 a year, $600 a year. Those people will not feel the pinch because they're already spending large amounts on goods. And there is something to be said for, as you get to be my age, and me and my wife have worked really hard on this, you get more comfortable in life. You start to realize, like when I was a kid, spending $100 on something was unheard of. Now, I remember there were times I literally had no money in the bank, and we would write a check and hope it didn't clear. That was not fun. But through our hard work and luck, really, we're not rich by any means, but we can now. We're not going to feel the pinch of a Hexagear kit being $20 more. It's going to bother me maybe, but I'm not going to not do it. I'll pay it if I have to pay it. So unfortunately, this will hit, I think, what I see on YouTube, which is a lot of collectors who obviously don't have a lot of money. They're making YouTube videos. They're just not, you can tell they're not doing well. They even talk about it. And they get a toy a month or something. And I always try to support those small channels because some of those reviewers are really making some fun videos, or at least they're trying to have their little channel, so I always support those small viewers. I mean, small channels. Like mine's small, it's 4,000 subs or whatever. But I'm afraid that those people will start to really feel the pinch, because to them, $100 a month on a toy is outrageous. My budget can be $300 a month on toys if I want, and it has been for a long time. So, it's a real shame that, I don't want to say it was misinformation, although it was, that people stopped understanding the basics of economics in lieu of instead of understanding that stuff, they really wanted to kind of stick it to somebody. A lot of people, they're so sick of inflation. They're so sick of high prices, which that's cool. I understand. Gas here is almost $5, Luckily, I don't use a lot of it, but they're so sick of that they wanted to just vote for something that was different and that would bring in relief. I literally have a friend on one of my social networks who I know has no money. We're talking lights getting turned off, asking online for money to help pay for these lights, saying that I think Trump will basically save me. I don't know if that'll happen or not. I don't have a crystal ball, but I know that putting tariffs on the basic items that you want or need, food and all that, because remember, Canada ships us lumber. You tariff that, the price of lumber goes up. What do we use lumber for? Everything but building houses. Everybody knows how expensive houses are right now. Here in San Diego, houses are on $700 to $1 million plus dollars. Back in Texas, where everybody claims it's cheap, sure, if you live out in the middle of nowhere, houses on my block, which it was not a wealthy area, they were $500,000 and $600,000 when we left. So you're starting to see these prices creep up everywhere. This is not necessarily due just to demand and stuff. A lot of it has to do with a company sees blood in the water and sees that they can ask more money, and it starts asking more money until the system collapses, or until everything stops selling, or until you have something drastic and insane happen, like people just aren't going to want to have kids anymore. That's why you're going to have places like the US, but especially Japan, China, are having these huge issues where, even though they're now, China, for example, is no longer doing the one child only policy. They're actually paying people to have more kids and stuff like that. Nobody wants to do it. The stuff is too expensive, but also that the people are starting to realize that life is sort of part of a system that doesn't really repay you that well. When my dad was a kid, he could work a job for his entire life, the same job, retire with like a pension, get some Social Security, whatever, and buy a house. He had 7 kids. And, until an accident happened, he was able to do that. I knew people like my grandfather who got those benefits. That doesn't happen, or it's not going to happen as easily for the people up and coming. So that's what happens when costs get too high. So you're going to start seeing toy channels either spending more, which is for the big channels that make a ton of money from views. Like there's a channel that all they review are the very expensive hot toys, the really nice 1/6 scale toys. Good for that person. But I don't want just one type of channel who can afford, massive toys. I try to do all sorts of toys on my channel. I do dirt cheap ones like these Maker's Marks, the Chap-made type toys. I do these expensive 118 or 125 scales. I'll do model kits that are $100. I tend not to spend more than $150 on a toy at a time. I just don't, it's the end of the point. I'm like, I can get several cool toys for that. I just got one I'm going to unbox. I bought for $130, but that was a Christmas gift from my wife. So, excuse me. So basically what's going to happen is these goods are going to come in from China. The company who is going to sell them to us has to pay more money, and we're going to have to eat some of that cost. So this isn't a wagging of my finger to people who voted a certain way or whatever. This is a wagging of my finger to people who literally misunderstand how this stuff works. To be fair, this year, 6 months ago, and I was reminded of this because I was making some notes for what I was going to say on this because I kind of ramble. Biden put 100% tariff on Chinese EVs, electric vehicles, because he wanted to try and protect, quote, the American workers and Detroit and stuff or whatever who are making. For example, they showed a car dealership in Oklahoma, I think it was, who was happy. He was a Chevy car dealership, and he was happy about the 100% tariff because he wanted to keep manufacturing in the U.S. and also keep it in-house, as he said. And the sad part about that is he's trying to say he wants to keep prices high. We get cheap Chinese electronics all the time. Look around your room. This mic was probably made in China. The camera is a Samsung, so maybe made in Korea, but still, they use Chinese parts or labor, I'm sure, in some way, if not all the way. We get cheap products, tech products all the time that bring down the cost, and so now you can get a $300 Android that is a really good device, right? iPhones are another case altogether, but so to not apply that same logic to a car, and especially in a time when one of the calls of the left is to help curb global warming or climate change, in order to do that, you need inexpensive electric cars that people, like I can afford a $50,000. I mean, we could go buy one right now and pay $500 a month or whatever for it. A lot of people can do that, but to really impact the emissions coming from car issue, you need inexpensive electric vehicles. And so for Biden to put that tariff on those $15,000, what are they, BD, is that who makes them? From China, even after the tax, it'll probably be still cheaper than a Tesla, who makes them, I guess, in China, I believe, or has a Chinese plant there. I guess he makes in Texas or whatever. But anyway, point being, tariffs increase costs. That's the idea. Now, the difference here is the claim is that Biden was trying to do that to stop cheap imported Chinese cars. You can say cheap imported toys. So American companies might want this for the toys. So that their American cars are the only thing you can buy, and you have to pay the $50,000 for it. And that's why you see mostly tech bros driving around, or people with a little money driving around in electric cars. You're not going to see a poor person afford a used electric car, or even a new electric car. It's just not going to happen. That's when you start to see the changes, when people in lower incomes can afford it, or at least high low income, if that makes sense. So, that was Biden's claim for his tariffs. And this new claim for tariffs on Canada and Mexico, the idea is that he wants to penalize Canada and Mexico for illegal immigration coming here. So these are punitive, these are punishing tariffs. These are an attempt to punish the countries for sending us illegal immigrants. Even though a lot of the illegal immigrants coming here through San Diego, by the way, in a hole in the fence, are from China and other countries. They're not just Mexicans coming up. There's people coming from way south, way more south, from a country that's being torn apart, and they just want to get their kids out of there. I don't blame them. So he's going to punish them, our closest friends and neighbors, for an issue that really has been attempted to be solved a million times, but it will not be solved this way. You're not going to punish a country into caring. You still have to address the root cause of this stuff, right? So that's his reasoning for Canada. Now, understand, Canada's lumber, cars, a lot of cars coming in here. Mexico is everything else. Biggest trading partner we have, Mexico. And you're going to punish them, or you're going to put this tariff on them for fentanyl and for illegal immigrants, which is an issue that we can solve. They're not going to solve it. For China, he's claiming it's for cheap products because China cheats copyright law stuff. And of course, there's some issues there with how China operates, and why they have a quote unquote unfair advantage. But it will punish the people like me and you who get these cheaper products and we enjoy them. It's all in our house. So if you're willing to pay more, you're not really going to teach China a lesson. They're going to sell it to me for the same price. It's the American company that's going to crank up the price after they have to pay the tariff. You know what I mean? If you're cool with that, that's cool. But, we just have to understand the mechanics of how it actually works. We have to make sure that we understand that. And this is just my kind of little note, maybe a little bit, of I like to predict things. I like to look at, I've done this since I was a kid. I like to say, I think this is going to happen. Even if it's kind of far off, I just try to kind of imagine what I think is going to happen and then see what happens. Sometimes I've been right. Like I used to write about streaming video games, which they use commonly all the time on Xbox and PlayStation. I used to write about smaller and smaller tech, which is, stuff like that. I love to kind of predict. And with this, I will predict that the prices will go up, of course, but they're already so cheap on some toys that you're not going to notice a huge difference. You're not going to really feel it. Where you're really going to feel it, I think, is going to be the higher end stuff. Collectible shoes, nice Joy Toy 118 figs that are 200 already. They're going to be 250 or whatever. That's where you're going to feel it. And it's just important to know why that's happening. It's also important to know the history of it, though. We've had tariffs for many years, and we've had chances to rescind some and to adjust some, and it didn't happen. So everybody's a little bit to blame here. But to think that the incoming administration's idea is to lower costs, that's what you ran on, is to stop inflation or to stop high prices, you're not going to do it this way. There's so much more you could be doing immediately to help lower costs. You could address price gouging at grocery stores, because the only grocery store we have here is Albertsons, and they're owned by blah, blah, blah. You can stop that kind of things to encourage smaller grocery stores or farmers markets or something to give people, especially people in like food deserts, a chance to buy goods that aren't. I bought eggs the other day for $8. Now, granted, there were cheaper ones, but I bought those expensive ones because they're more local company that takes better care of their chickens and stuff. And that's kind of important to me. If I'm going to eat them, I'm going to, make sure they're taken care of. So just be aware that this is not going to, tariffs are not going to help with pricing. The only thing they're going to really do is maybe act as a bargaining chip, and we redo some agreements like what Trump did with NAFTA. He didn't destroy it like he claimed, or what somebody claimed, or that he claimed that he destroyed it. It's more of a kind of shaped it, which is fine, and then put some new name on it. We're going to have to just do that again. We'll just do that again. The next president coming in, whoever it is, will probably put it back. It's going to go back and forth. I'm cool with negotiations on pricing and trade, but there's a big fear that this could lead to what they call a trade war. Now, just as of today, as I was driving in the car, I heard on the radio that Canada and Mexico both and China both shared out their negative opinions of this tariff plan. From what I understand so far, they haven't announced their retaliatory tariffs, meaning that, okay, fine, you tariff our stuff, we're going to tariff your stuff. So prices go up even more. Exports, imports, everything goes up. I think they're going to announce it. I think it'll be kept mild around the 20%. And then I think, although that's not mild by some standards, and then I think a lot of it will be settled into Congress and Senate, and everything's going to cook down a little bit. Trump makes huge claims. If you don't know this, you're not very smart. He makes huge claims, knowing full well that he can't do them all. He's not going to deport every person in the United States day one. He's not going to do that. I'm not saying it's not dangerous talk. I'm just saying that a lot of what he talks about, building a wall, the entire, that stuff, it will settle down. If anything, a lot of that stuff takes years. So bear that in mind, though, as you go along. If you see prices creeping up and stuff, you have to go back further than just a couple years or just the incoming president or whatever. So really fascinating stuff. I'm not an economist. If I know an economist on my channel, I'd love to have you on to talk about this stuff. The economy and money is the true blood, is the true breath of the world, if you think about it. It's kind of the only universal language, really, if you think about it. You have to have money. You have to have imports, exports, trade. And those of us who were born here in the United States, and I mean that, half of my family comes from Native Americans and, Cherokee and stuff like that. And the other half comes from Germany. And I'm a pretty common person. So this, somebody who was... This has been my land. You know what I mean? It's easy to forget how nice we have it. Even when it's at its worst, it is bad. Not good for everybody by any means, especially social issues and stuff like that. But we have such luxury here. We really, really do. And when you get a little bit older and you get a little bit of money, you really start to realize, oh my God, money can buy happiness. But for those who are squeezed already and those collectors out there, tariffs are not going to bring your costs down. I promise. It might only be $1 or $2, but it's not going to lower them. If it does, it's because the company was trying for some positive spin on it and they ate the cost. But every expert I have seen has said that's not going to happen because that didn't happen last time. So interesting rant, I guess, for me. I just wanted to put it out. These are kind of like my diary entry, too, for few years in the future, because I have these going back 20 years. And it's interesting to watch the old stuff. So let me know what you think is going to happen, and take care of each other and all that stuff like that. Go buy a toy, enjoy yourself, have a good one, and enjoy the holiday if you celebrate it. Bye-bye.